Hey guys. Welcome to another episode of the Chad Prather Show. Wednesday hump day. I want to get into a lot of things today. It's just going to be me and you for the day. Party Foul Steve's off doing something else, and I got to travel tomorrow, so there's a lot happening. And I'm going to talk to you about a number of things that are on my mind. I'm going to answer some questions. Some people have asked me a few things. I'm going to try to answer them on this episode of the Chad Prather Show. So thank you for joining us. I want to see you in the chat. Please move the needle a little bit by pumping those dancing bananas in there. The dancing bananas, that's the new thing here on the Chad Prather Show. We're rebranding September 1st, the all-new, improved, bigger, badder, better Chad Prather Show. We're going to be right here on all the places. So tell your friends, tell your family, call your mama, tell the kids. We're going to have a good time here on the Chad Prather Show. So thankful for every one of you. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure that you hit like, hit subscribe, hit share, all the things. Leave the comments in there. Let's pump this thing up. This is a grassroots deal we're doing. We're not getting any help from anybody. We have been throttled for years, man, and we're making a comeback. And more dedicated and committed than ever to growing this show. So thank you for being a part of it. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Birch Gold, as well as our friends over at Allied Oilfield. We'll talk about them here in just a moment. I got a story I want to tell you. I don't want to tell it yet, though. Something that happened here locally. And I want to see if I can kind of Glenn Beckett for you, maybe shed a tear when I tell that story. So we'll save it till more numbers get in. I don't know why. I mean, this will probably be a shorter episode today because it's just me, and you don't need to hear me just rattle off with my talking head here. Somebody asked me the other day, yesterday as a matter of fact, to explain tariffs, how they work. So I will give you a Tariffs 101 lesson. I'll try to anyway. Then maybe I'll throw in a history lesson as well as our tearjerker story, our feel-good story. And I don't know, somewhere along the way, I'll probably think of something that'll piss me off and I'll have to rant. Before we dive in head first into the shallow pool, let me tell you about my friends over at Birch Gold. Text CHAD, I spell it Chad, to 989898, and the folks at Birch Gold will send you a free no-obligation information kit on how you can diversify your retirement with a tax-sheltered IRA backed by physical gold. They want to help you. They got an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau. There's literally no reason why you can't trust them. They know what they're doing, and the devaluation of the dollar that's going on because of the BRICS nations and their attempt to replace the dollar as the global currency, gold is going to go higher and higher. It went up 40% just last year. Wouldn't you like to be a part of that? Ride that train, baby. So if you're laying awake at night because your 401k is tied to the stock market, or maybe it's not doing anything because it's with a former employer and it's just sitting there, maybe it's time to roll it over. And the folks at Birch Gold can help you do that. So text Chad to the phone number 989898. That's a silly, crazy, weird phone number, but that's the phone number, 989898, and just type Chad in the message box. And then do me the favor of hitting send. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. And if they give you a call and want your address to send you that information kit, give it to them. They're good folks. Tens of thousands of satisfied customers. And I appreciate the folks over at Birch Gold. How are you guys doing? I want to see you in the chat. I want to know, are you feeling good? Yes, no? Are you excited about the world you're living in? I mean, we've got a lot of crazy stuff going on in our world, but you got to keep some heads or tails. I mean, you got to have some... you got to have something that makes sense. You got to have a North Star, right? Which is something else I'll talk about in this episode, is a question that I received the other day about why not only am I a conservative, but why am I a conservative that believes in God? I want to tell you why I don't believe you can be a conservative unless you believe in God. So that's how narrow-minded we're going to get today. So if you're curious, stick around, put on those listening ears today, and remind me in the chat to tell that story here in a little bit. Answer that question. Oh, man, I am going to see my mother this week. I'm going to go see my mom. She had a birthday last weekend, and I was obligated somewhere else, but I'm headed over there to see her, so I'm looking forward to seeing her, spend a little time with her, and see if we can make her laugh a little bit. We tend to do that. My mother and I have a good time when we talk. And she didn't get around like she used to, but she still got her mind. Thank God, she still got her mind. So be thankful for those parents, man. Going to see her this week. I will give her your kind regards. Those of you in the chat, I appreciate you. And, hope you guys are having a good weekend. Next weekend, next Friday, I think that is going to be the 15th. Let me double check my calendar here. That is going to be the 15th. I'm going to be in Fredericksburg, Texas. So if you are excited about that and you're in the wine country of Texas, come hang out. Be back at the Rock Box Theater. We're always selling that sucker out. And next week, I'll be in Westchester, New York at the Trump Resort up there for my good friend Chloe Castillo, her gala, kicking it off. I'm a part of the advisory board for Make Music Right, and we're going to speak. Lara Trump will be there as well. And we'll have a good time. And that is going to be next Friday the 8th, Westchester, New York. Going up there for free. Doing it as a favor to Chloe. She is a go-getter, and I'm excited for what she's building with this, pushing music back to a place of values and foundation. Let's talk about tariffs for a minute. Now, I'm not going to bore you, but somebody asked me, they literally just asked me yesterday, they said, can we talk about tariffs? And I think that maybe we do take it for granted because not everybody understands exactly what that means. Now, apparently it seems that Trump is winning when everybody said he was going to lose. And there's a lot of economists out there whose names you can't even pronounce, who, no matter what happens, like this 15% with the EU that was announced the other day, the $750 billion, the supposed influx is going to come in because of energy. A lot of economists are out there saying it's not going to work. It's going to be much ado about nothing. It's never going to materialize. So let's talk about this thing. Tariffs. It makes politicians sweat. It makes the political pundits scream. The globalists are clutching their pearls. Now, before your eyes glaze over, folks, I'm going to try to do this and try to be accurate. You can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an economist. I'm not. I'm a jackleg. Just a jackleg, whatever. But hang with me because this isn't going to be, I'm going to try to explain this where it's not a boring Econ 101 lecture, okay? Real world story of how Donald Trump took one of the oldest tools in the economic toolbox and he just dusted it off and everybody hated him for it. Everybody speculated failure. And he used it, honestly, what we're seeing like a sledgehammer to kind of knock the teeth out of some unfair trade out there. So first of all, what is a tariff? It's simple. It's a tax on stuff we import. So you got goods that are made in other countries and they're sold here. So when the U.S. slaps, let's say, a 25% tariff on steel from China, it doesn't just make Chinese steel more expensive. It suddenly makes American steel look a whole lot better. And so it forces the buyers here to ask, why not just go domestic? That means jobs, more factories, more production. It's going to come back home. So rather than the money going to China, we're making it far more attractive to buy domestic. Now you're going to cue the media panic when that happens. They're going to say trade war, prices are going to be up, economic doom, the sky is falling. But here's what happened for real, actually, under Trump in the first term. Between 2016 and 2019, nearly 500,000 manufacturing jobs came back. GDP growth in 2018 hit 2.9%. Over $80 billion in tariff revenue poured into the U.S. Treasury. And no, that didn't come from your pocket, which is what's nice. It came from the companies that were importing the cheap stuff from abroad. And most of them adjusted and they found new suppliers or they ate the cost. Now, Trump wasn't just playing defense, and that's what I like about Trump. He was throwing elbows in a game that we'd been losing for a long time, decades. So for years, you had countries like China that were rigging the system. They were subsidizing their industries, manipulating the currency. They were dumping products below cost. And by the way, using slave labor and child labor to build it and make it. And we just took it. And so Trump came along and said, we're not doing that anymore. So he threw down the tariffs. Those were his poker chips. He called China's bluff, and guess what? They came to the table. And the result, the phase one trade deal, where China agreed to buy $200 billion more in American goods and finally start respecting intellectual property, that's not nothing, folks. So that's what happened. And let's be fair now. Tariffs aren't magic. I said back in January, you got to watch, you got to pay attention. We'll see what's going to happen because they don't come without some friction. Some U.S. businesses get squeezed, especially those that are reliant on foreign components. I mean, there is automotive stuff that the chips come from Taiwan, right? And so China, they hit back with their own tariffs, particularly targeting American farmers. But here's the thing. The Trump administration backed our farmers up, rolled out the relief packages, the supply chain incentives, so we didn't fold under the pressure. Now, the critics, They all said, and they're still saying, that tariffs are going to kill us. Now, the reality is different. It woke us up because tariffs aren't meant to last forever. They're leverage, right? They're the bargaining chip. You don't keep them on just to be mean. You use them to renegotiate the deal, and you shift the balance of power and remind the world we're not your discount doormat. So globalism, thank you, Barack Obama, sold us the promise of cheaper goods and leveling the playing field, but the hidden cost was factory towns turned into ghost towns, and American workers were discarded like last season's inventory and dependence on adversaries for everything from antibiotics to semiconductors. That's why when I've told you to get your medical kits, I'm like, you got to remember, your pharmaceuticals, they're coming from China. You're coming from India. You get into a trade war with them and your medicine doesn't show up. You got to have that stuff on hand. And that's not a commercial. That's just a fact. Trump came along and said, no more. He didn't start a trade war. He ended a one-sided surrender because, again, guys like Barack Obama wanted to weaken America because, American exceptionalism, that became a bad word. And so globalism was the mode of the day. And yes, tariffs raised some prices, but they also raised something else. They raised respect. They raised respect for the American labor, for American products, for American sovereignty. And that, my friends, is worth every penny. So we're going to see how this thing plays out. But I think so far it's playing out pretty daggum good. I like it. I'm a fan of it, all right? Again, I'm not an economist. But again, this is what it's called when you tell them to pay up or pack up. And that is what we're talking about when we say make America great again. All right? Let me tell you about my friends over at Allied Oilfield. Speaking of all that, those guys over in West Texas, they've been doing this for 20 years, over 20 years. They make the equipment for the oil and gas industry. That's the stuff that's out in the oil fields. They also make trucking equipment, and their trucks, their trailers, their all the stuff, all the equipment. You just got to check it out at alliedoilfield.com. You got to go check them out. They're so cool, and they're good folks. And they got some big equipment over there. Put your kids over there on the website, man. Show them some of those big trucks. Show the grandkids, alliedoilfield.com. But if you're in the trucking industry, in the oil and gas industry, if you're an engineer, if you've got a design concept, you need something they need to build out, or you need some of the products they've already done. They have been industry leaders and innovators. A lot of this stuff that is relied on every day in the oil field, making it where we can drill, baby, drill. That was created by them. So check them out at alliedoilfield.com. All right, I promised you a feel-good story. Are you ready? Here we go. Let me tell you a story that starts, like so many of the best stories, in a small town right here where I live. You say, but Chad, you live in Houston. No, I live north of Houston. I don't live in Houston. I'm a good 45 minutes to an hour away from Houston. I'm in a small town. We still live in a place where there's more pickup trucks than there are Teslas, at least out in this part. It's where the high school football field is still sacred ground. It's Texas. And it's where everybody still waves to each other. I was in a gun store just the other day, shaking hands with people, recognizing people. They were recognizing me. We had a great little visit with some folks I hadn't seen in a long time. I've only been living here a couple of years. People still wave to each other when we go down a back road or a two-lane road. You kind of put that finger up, on the steering wheel and tell them hi. And they don't do it because they have to. They do it because they want to. Now, I want to tell you a story about a guy by the name of Walter Jenkins. Walt is 84 years old. He's a Korean War vet. He lost his wife 2 Christmases ago. He lives alone now, 84. Got a modest little house, little panel house, little white house with green shutters, and he's kind of got a sagging front porch. And Walt's not the kind of guy who complains. I've talked to him a time or two. He's a pretty solid dude. He's from that generation that just endures. You know the type. And if you pass by his house, and I have, you'll see an old, faded American flag that's perched in a rusted fence post right out there by his mailbox. It's frayed at the edges. It's kind of coming unraveled a little bit, sun-bleached, but it's still out there. And Walt makes sure that it's out there. Every morning, Walt walks out slow, steady. He's got his cane in one hand. And he makes sure that flag is straight. I don't care if it's raining, snowing, Texas heat. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And I've seen him do this. He whispers something to it. Maybe it's a prayer. I don't know. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe it's just a thought, something to remind him of why he loves that flag. But it's always the same ritual. He touches the pole like it's sacred, like it's tethering him to something eternal. And maybe it is. And I'm sure he thinks about that, especially being the age that he is. Now, a few weeks ago, a teenager named Kyle, 16 years old, acne, earbuds, the whole thing. He was on his bicycle when he saw Walter fall. He just collapsed right there by the fence post. Now, Kyle could have just kept on riding. He could have posted about it, but he didn't. He dropped the bike and he sprinted across the yard. He called 911 and he sat with Walter until the help arrived. Now, Walt was okay. He was dehydrated and dizzy, but while he was in the hospital, Kyle did something that nobody asked him to do. He took the tattered flag down and he replaced it with a brand new one that he bought with his own money from the hardware store. He dug a new hole and he planted a new post, strong and secure, straight, and he put the flag up. He did that for Walter. Now, when Walter came home, he cried. Not like a man in pain or a man who had regret, but like a man who'd seen a glimpse of a country that he thought was slipping away and losing its values, suddenly standing right there in his front yard, alive and well, 16 years old. He saw the country he was proud of in that young boy. And folks, I tell you this story today because we get so wrapped up in what's wrong with America that we miss what's right. And what's right is that we still have kids like Kyle. We still have men like Walter. We still have flags, and that flag means something. And we still have those fence posts, and we still have those front porches that mean something. And maybe the world is on fire. Maybe everything feels upside down, but as long as there's a boy who's willing to stop his bike and a man who's willing to salute the dawn with a whisper and a prayer, we're going to be okay. Because America isn't a government. America isn't an X feed. America is a million small stories like Walter and Kyle. And sometimes America is just a flag and a fence post that's held up by pride and by love. God bless you, Walt. Woo! Let me answer a question. I told you I'd do it. I got a message from somebody the other day who he said, I don't believe in God. He said, but I'm a conservative. And he said, why should I believe in God? And he said, what did he say? He said, why should I believe in God? Because people always, when I say something to them or I attack the other side, he said, they always say, how Christian of you? He said, well, I got one up on them because I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in God. And he said, you seem to think, Chad, that I have to believe in God in order to be a conservative. Well, I get that question from time to time, and it sort of cuts to the core of who we are and why we stand the way we do. Why do conservative values, in my opinion, require belief in God? And I'll tell you in a nutshell. Because without God, you don't have a foundation. You've got shifting sand. You've got feelings that are masquerading as truth, and you've got power replacing principle. See, that's the problem with wokeism, and I'll tell you more about that later. See, conservative values are rooted in the idea that truth is not invented, it's revealed. That rights are not granted by the government, they're endowed by our, say it with me, Creator. I see you in the chat, guys. You know what I'm going to say. It believes that there's a moral order to the universe. We're not living in entropy where things in motion are just spinning off and falling apart. And that order that is in the universe, it doesn't change just because culture decides to throw a tantrum and requires a safe space. So without God, what do you appeal to? Consensus, opinion polls, social media trends? That's not a foundation. That's a popularity contest for the morally confused. You see, I believe God is the anchor. He's the lawgiver above the lawmakers. the judge above the judges, the one who says this is right and this is wrong. You don't have a standard of bad and good if you don't have the standard of God, because God is the ultimate standard for good. And see, when he says this is right and this is wrong, he's not opinionated. He does it because he's holy and his justice demands it. See, conservatism at its best, and I think we've lost the meaning of that. Conservatism understands this. It respects tradition because tradition often reflects accumulated wisdom. And much of that is handed down from biblical truth. It values family because family was God's idea long before it was a government checkbox. It champions freedom because we believe God made man to be free, not to be ruled by tyrants or enslaved by systems. And let's be honest, if there is no God, then there's no such thing as inalienable rights. Because if government gives them, government can take them away. That's why belief in God isn't optional for conservatism. It's essential. That's the way I believe. And I believe that because it draws the line between freedom and tyranny, between dignity and decay, between a life of meaning and a life of moral chaos. So no, this is not about forcing religion on anyone. This is about acknowledging where our values come from. Because if you remove God from the equation, and the whole worldview collapses like a house of cards in a wind tunnel built on a fault line. We believe in God not just because we go to church on Sundays, but because if there's no higher authority, then the only authority left is man. And history has made it painfully clear that when man tries to play God, he becomes a monster. He becomes a dictator. He becomes a tyrant. And they're never benevolent. That's why, for me, God has to stay at the center. Because when we forget him, we forget who we are. Now, let me give you a lesson on that. You still with me? Good. Little story they don't teach you in school. Take you back to 1787. I want you to picture it. You got the powdered wigs, you got the wooden teeth, you got a bunch of scrappy little colonial guys in a hot, sweaty room in Philadelphia, and they're arguing about how to build a country from scratch. No AC, no DoorDash, just ideals, ink, and independence, okay? Now, these weren't perfect men. Some of them drink too much. Some of them had a lot of debt, and yes, many were flawed by the standards of their time and ours. People will say, oh, they're slave owners. This country was built on oppression. Stop. They did something extraordinary. They looked tyranny in the face and said, now we're going to pass on that. And they wrote the Constitution. Not perfect, not divine, but dang near prophetic. And it was built not on control, but on limits to control. It said, government, here's what you can't do. And people, here's what you never lose. And that was radical. Let me tell you why. Because most of the world back then was still living under kings and emperors or some other flavor of dictator. But these dudes, they said power belongs to the people, and they meant it. They meant it. And that's why they added the Bill of Rights like a big, bold middle finger to tyranny. Now, you fast forward a couple of hundred years, and here we are. We've got people that are begging to be ruled. They don't say that out loud, but they are begging to be ruled. They are crying out for censorship. They love cancel culture. They're applauding surveillance. They use the AI and they use the social media and they tell all of their business with facial recognition and eyeball scanning and fingerprinting and, little devices in your home that are listening to everything you do, from your conversations to your prayer to your sex life. We're electing leaders who think the government is your savior, your parent, your boss, your nanny, all rolled into one. And I'm over here like, y'all forgot we fought a war against the greatest superpower of the day so we wouldn't have to ask permission to speak and pray and protect ourselves or pursue happiness. Let me drop some knowledge on you. The American Revolution didn't start with bullets. It started with taxes. You had the Stamp Act and the Tea Act and the Sugar Act, and every act was a slap in the face. And the colonists, they didn't whine on social media. Hey, they drew up some stuff for the newspaper, things like the Federalist Papers, but then they stepped out and they got on a boat in 1773 and they threw tea in the Boston Harbor and they locked arms and said no taxation without representation. Does that sound familiar? Because we're living in the same kind of pressure cooker right now. Except instead of the redcoats, we got red tape. Instead of King George, we got bureaucrats you never voted for who think they know what's best for your kids, your money, your land, and your guns. And here's the kicker. You don't have to pick up a musket to fight for freedom. You just have to remember your history, because history isn't just a story. It's a warning label. See, the founders didn't build this country on the idea that government knows best. They built it on the radical, dangerous, and beautiful idea that you do. They actually expected you to have personal responsibility. So the next time someone tells you America was built on oppression, remind them that it was built on rebellion. The kind of rebellion that said, we will not be subjects, we're going to be citizens. And that is something worth remembering. You need to share that clip with your family. Because we have, in this day and age, the woke mind virus, which is a comedy of illogical reasoning. It's no reasoning at all. Our founding fathers would be rolling over in the grave right now. John Locke and his principles of freedom, life, liberty, and property, and yet we're being taxed to death on our property to the point where you never even actually own it. But then you got these peons out there, the circus, these wild carnival acts, and they got this thing called woke. It's a worldview, it's a lifestyle, it's a political movement, if you will. It's a self-help seminar and a therapy session all rolled into one, except it doesn't help anybody because it's a philosophy built on feelings instead of facts. It's victimhood instead of virtue, and it's a grievance instead of gratitude. That's why we have so much manufactured oppression over things like an American Eagle blue jeans commercial. Everybody's got a grievance. If you took away their victimhood, if you took away their problems, they wouldn't know who they are anymore. They found their identity in their grievances. Perpetual victims. See, woke is what happens when you take a college gender studies class, throw in some Marxism and sprinkle it with X-likes and baptize it in a river of narcissism on TikTok where everybody thinks they're supposed to cry and get attention. You see, the woke worldview is basically this. I feel, therefore I am. It's Rene Descartes for drama queens. Logic, biology, history, doesn't matter. If it offends my ever-shifting emotional ecosystem, it must be bigotry. It must be Nazism. It must be fascism. It must be racism and homophobia. Listen, if your opinion causes me any psychological discomfort, then you're not just wrong. You're the violence. You're literal Hitler. So let me translate. My truth, I'm so sick of that term. It means your reality must conform to my delusions, no matter what those are. Our founding fathers did not work this hard and sacrifice so much for this. We don't believe that reality's got to conform to these crazy, insane delusions. No. And let me break it all down, because this is what our founding fathers, I think, would say right now. If they had to encounter someone in the 21st century here in America with this woke logic that we're just being bombarded with, having it shoved down our throat. So let me give you a little logic myself. The very thing woke ideology tries to cancel, okay? See, woke, first of all, it's self-canceling by design. Woke ideology is the only belief system where agreeing with it makes you actually more likely to be eaten alive by it. So it's like adopting a pet cobra and calling that progress. You can be the wokest person in the room and still get canceled by someone who just made up a new pronoun and decided you didn't say it fast enough. See, it's a pyramid scheme of moral outrage. And the currency is victim points. The more oppressed you are, or I should say the more oppressed you claim to be, then the higher your rank. But eventually the math breaks down when everybody wants to be a victim and nobody wants to take responsibility. The second thing is woke redefines words until they mean nothing. And words mean something. There's a reason I got a tattoo right here on my chest. Let me move where you can see it. Some of you have seen that. It's John 1:1. In the beginning was the word, NRK einho logos in the Greek, in the Koine Greek, the marketplace Greek of the day, which is what the New Testament was written in. People say, why do you have that? In the beginning was the word. Well, because words matter. Because if you control language, you control culture. You control everything with the words. So racism, for instance, used to mean judging someone by the color of their skin. Now it means disagreeing with a leftist. Misgendering somebody, that's literal violence. Burning down cities in protest, that's called mostly peaceful. A man in a dress winning a woman's swim meet, they call that progress. Woke is the linguistic version of turning every traffic light green at once, which sounds nice until you realize civilization crashes when nothing means what it used to. So we've got to protect language. And the third thing is woke ignores human nature. That's a big one. That's a big one. We talked about God earlier. You see, if you don't have God, if you get woke, you're not awake. You're ignoring human nature because woke ideology says everybody's inherently good, unless they're white, male, straight, conservative, successful, or use common sense and happen to wear a cowboy hat, because then they're the devil. But somehow they still believe people are going to magically behave nobly when you defund the police, erase the borders, and let toddlers pick their gender. They're not going to. That's like handing that toddler a chainsaw and call it exploring identity. It doesn't work. Man's inhumanity to man for the last several thousand years has done nothing but proven that. That's why socialism and Marxism and communism doesn't work, because at the end of the day, somebody's in charge. And again, they're never benevolent dictators. The fourth thing is woke promotes unity by division. See, they scream diversity, equity, and inclusion, but they're dividing everyone by race, gender, class, identity, and trauma. It's unity through segregation. That's like putting everybody in their own tiny emotional panic room and then hoping they're going to build a community. See, you're not a human being anymore. You're a walking checkbox. And the only thing more dangerous than that is the smug 24-year-old sociology major managing HR at your office who thinks she's saving the world by firing you for quoting Winston Churchill. We live in a crazy world. I'll give you another thing. This one's free. Woke is emotionally exhausting and logically impossible. You can't build a worldview where feelings override facts and expect society to function. You just can't do it. It doesn't work. You try building a bridge based on emotional engineering. Do that instead of math. You let me know how that works out when you drive over it, okay? Because woke doesn't offer solutions. It manufactures problems. It doesn't heal anything. It hunts. It hunts. It doesn't liberate. It lectures. It berates. It looks down the nose. It condescends. It judges. And worst of all, it never forgives. There's no redemption in the woke faith. Only eternal penance, social exile. Oh, and don't forget the hashtags. And I'll give you a final thought here. Woke ideology, I hate it. I despise it. I've said for years that political correctness was straight out of the pit of hell. So is woke ideology. It's destroying society. It's a cult of moral superiority with no moral anchor. Did you hear me? It's a cult of moral superiority with no moral anchor. It claims to be the future, but it can't even define a woman. It doesn't know what reality is right now. It says trust the science, unless the science says there's only two genders, babies feel pain, that an unborn child is a child, or socialism doesn't work. So that worldview, you keep building that house of cards. I've used that analogy for years now. Well, the wind is going to come, and that wind is called reality. So no, I don't care how much you believe in it. I don't care how much your kids or your grandkids believe in it. Woke will never work. Not because people aren't compassionate enough, but because eventually somebody has to pay the bill. Somebody's got to take out the trash and fix the plumbing. And woke ideology fired all of them for toxic masculinity. Woke is a dreamland where every rule gets bent, every standard is erased, and every outcome is equal, except the outcome is always failure. Woke is not enlightenment, folks. It's entitlement with a vocabulary, and it's one that you can't keep up with, that vocabulary. They're always inventing themselves, reinventing themselves. You don't know, because the rest of us out here, we're going to be over here building and working, raising kids, loving God, loving truth, laughing at the chaos, mocking it, ridiculing it. That's what we're going to do. Loving God. If I said that already, I'll say it again. Loving God. And we're going to be over here watching common sense make a comeback like vinyl records and Clint Eastwood movies. I believe in that hope because I don't believe the real world is woke. I believe we're wide awake, which is one of the reasons why I'm constantly preaching critical thinking and common sense. Folks, thanks for hanging out with me for this half hour, a little bit longer than a half hour. Whew, I think I got all of that out. I think I covered all the bases. Hit the like and share button if you got something out of this. Tell your friends about it. Say, you should have listened to what Chad had to say. He really handed it to him. I'll have to go back and watch it myself to see what I said. Go to watchchad.com. That's where all the fun stuff is. You'll see my live schedule as well as some other things that we're doing. We've got the rebranding coming up here in a month, and we're headed into August. The time is flying. I'll be honest with you guys. This has been the last year's been hard on me. Emotionally, spiritually, there's been a lot. God has laid a lot of burdens on my heart. And he's done some things in me that I was not expecting him to do in the last year. But I'm like you, we're persevering because we don't have any choice but to keep putting a foot in front of the other one and keep walking. And I truly believe that when you're feeling like you're broken and blind and you don't know where you're going, I think that's when God's the closest. Sometimes he's sitting there in the dirt with you. Might not be saying a whole lot. But again, maybe what he's saying is just his presence being there. Just wallowing in the mud down there with you, getting close to you. I believe that. I really do. I think that sometimes in your hardest moments when you feel like the world is the most bleak and you feel like there are no answers, that it's in those moments that breakthrough is on the way. We got to hold on to that hope, man. I've gotten to a point where at 52 years of age, I'll be 53 here in a couple of months, I cry freely. I laugh freely. I believe more than ever before that God's in control. I have to. And I felt like quitting. I'm just like you. We've all felt that. But here we are. We keep moving forward, man. I've heard some of your stories. And I don't always get to share mine. I'm thankful for guys like David Medina, our producer, and Party Foul Steve and his wife Tony. Folks like Sarah Gonzalez and her husband Stephen. Folks that you know, folks that you've heard of, folks that you know, I appreciate Todd and Kendra Spears, and I appreciate Graham and Alyssa Allen, and I appreciate Mexican Tony. I appreciate those guys because they're real, and they're real people in my life, and they've blessed me in a lot of ways, and I bless them. I do it right here. I honor them. And there's some folks in this world that have been a real blessing to me over the years. They've invested in my life, and I'm thankful for them. And those are what the things I'm trying to hold on to. Try to get back to your roots. And if you can get back to your roots, if you can get back to that place where you first began and return to that first love, I think that in the bleak times and the heartbreaking times, those are the times when you're going to feel most alive because it's the pressing through. It's the pressing through, ultimately the perseverance that's going to show the world that you got what it takes to make it. So you keep hanging on to that little thread you're hanging by, okay? Because that little thread is a big old dose of grace attached to the other side of it. And you just keep pulling on that thing until that big splash hits you right in the face. And that grace just overwhelms you and empowers you to do what God's calling you to do. Well, this was heavy. Didn't mean for it to be. All that to say, I love you. And I'm thankful for you. And I appreciate all that you've done to give me this platform and the privilege of being able to speak into your life for 10 years now. And hopefully we'll continue doing that. If you'll stick around, I will. How about that? Let's make a deal. God bless you. And take care of yourselves. We'll talk to you.